Hello everyone. Today I will be featuring the Myoko, the tier 7 IJN cruiser, the follow-up for the Aoba. As I mentioned before, I am leveling this cruiser line. The matchmaking is tier 8, so, well, tier 6 to tier 8, so pretty much what you will face quite often. Now tier 7 tends to be kind of a blessed tier in the sense that you often end up against tier 5s and tier 6s, but because you might end up against tier 8s as well, and tier 9s of course. I feel like this kind of matchmaking does a fairly good representation of what you're going to face most of the time. Now I'm pushing up to support my DD, since he is pushing the cap, and of course as a cruiser that's something you want to do if you have the stealth to get away with it. The Myoko turret traverse is atrocious. Absolutely horrible. We are talking, I think, 45-second turret traverse. It's basically nightmare status. If you need to get expert marksman as soon as possible. It's just a must-have perk on this ship. Six ships targeting me, so I'm turning away and I'm kiting away. I'm using my torps to get an idea of how fast this guy is going. But you can see, even barely turning, you can see how the turrets struggle to keep up and struggle to keep track of the target simply because the turret traverse is so awful. Now I get really unlucky here. I get undetected and that guy dies, so I figured I'm safe to damage con. However, the Fuso shot an HE volley, which will entirely miss, except for one shell, and that one shell starts a fire. I mean, isn't that how it always goes? Isn't that how it always goes? So now I have a permanent fire that I can't heal it. So that is of course a bit unfortunate. Ultimately though, the Myoko's strengths are the fact that it has 10 guns, huge fire chance on these guns, really good HE alpha, at close range really good AP alpha as well, and the sheer raw firepower per volley is very strong. However, it doesn't have the best DPM because the reload is quite long. The turret traverse is atrocious as well. So in terms of brawling and such things, the Myoko is questionable. Most of the time you kind of want to be kiting away and shooting the guys that are basically chasing you. That is the optimal way to play this ship. In fact, that is the optimal way to play pretty much all IGN cruisers. That kind of turn around, shoot all guns, kite, turn around, shoot all guns, and so forth. New Mexico pops up. I only get 3 hits on him as well. But I shot before he came around the corner, so I was in fact undetected. This next volley will, however, get me detected. But I'm already prepared for this, and I'm prepared to turn away. Myoko armor is pretty good. For tier 7, it's pretty good. It doesn't really hold up as well when you end up up-tiered. And some of the big issues that it has is that it actually has a really large citadel. You can see a bit too much AP coming in from all these ships trying to shoot me. I do, however, get a fire on the New Mexico, which is what I wanted. But now we're gonna kite away and we're gonna try to create some distance because I am obviously their favorite target at this point. I managed to get... Do I manage to get undetected? I'm thinking here if I get behind this island, I will be able to get undetected. And that's of course something you want to do as much as possible when playing these cruisers that have this huge fire chance. You want to get into a position where you can use your guns without actually taking any return fire. And it seems I am undetected behind the island, so I'm gonna of course slow down and I'm gonna park here and I'm gonna start farming this guy. Well, you can say once my turrets turn around, which of course takes absolutely ages. One of the great downsides of this ship, but it's always been there, and if it didn't have it, this ship might even be too strong, because the health pool on the ship is of course amazing. 39.2k health for a tier 7 cruiser is very good, combined with the armor as well. It's a strong ship, as long as you don't get full broadside, which is something, for example, the torpedoes tend to tempt you into doing, and the slow turret traverse tends to tempt you into doing. So you need to fight against the instincts to basically accelerate your turret traverse by turning full broadside, or try to get your torps off simply because you have so many of them and they are so strong. You need to fight that instinct and just maintain your angle at all costs all the time. As long as you maintain your angles, the Myoko is fairly tanky. The second you start giving full broadside, the Myoko is paper, and it gets devastated, and it explodes to everything. The Bismarck is moving up, so I'm moving up as well to get back behind the island. I want to keep this island chain between me and this guy, so I never get spotted as I fire upon him. And that is something you should basically make a part of all your cruiser gameplay. Find find positions where you can deal damage without taking return damage. I get a double fire on him, which is exactly what I wanted, and there's a smoke between me and the Fiji, so I should be able to shoot him. However, this Gajah Mada has moved up somewhere and is in fact spotting me. Bismarck is spotted once more, so I switch to him. He's of course one of the priority targets, and I know he doesn't have damage con, so I'm trying to deal as much damage to him as possible. Cyclone is kicking in, and Cyclone, of course, well, Cyclone is an issue for all cruisers. Well, unless you have radar, pretty much. Cyclone in general sucks for cruisers. It sucks especially much for the Myoko, because as I mentioned, this ship is a mid to long range specialist. It doesn't really do well in close range. Vulnerable citadel, bad torpedo angles, slow turret traverse, not the best firing angles on the guns either. There's plenty of things that doesn't make this ship particularly good in Cyclones. So a Cyclone kicking in is kind of the worst case scenario at this point. So my goal here is to deal as much damage and do as much before the Cyclone basically negates many of my advantages. Now, other perks that you should absolutely be getting on the Myoko, which you kind of didn't need on the Ioba, is Last Stand. You kite away a lot. You see it in my playstyle. You so often see me, I turn away, I'm kiting and dealing damage backwards. That's something you do a lot. The problem is, however, the IJN cruisers have very squishy rudders. You tend to break the rudder a lot on them. That's why, of course, I use the rudder module on the Ioba. But on the Myoko, you start to need Last Stand on the cruiser. In fact, I recommend Last Stand higher than I recommend Adrenaline Rush on the Myoko. Simply because if your rudder does break and you don't have Last Stand, you kind of almost have to damage con it, and then you get fires, and then you get permanent fires, and since you don't have any way of healing that damage, that fire tends to add up, especially because the Myoko has such a high base HP pool. Fires actually deal a fair amount of damage to you. So Last Stand, highly recommended on this ship. Trying to get some final volleys in just as the Cyclone kicks in. Broken engine Igle. A DD that tries to slow down, even if they have Last Stand. If they have a broken engine, they will slow down significantly slower. We do have a small lead, but they are pushing quite hard on this flank, and we're pretty split up at this point, whereas the enemy is kind of in a blob. And usually, while I dislike blobbing, in Cyclones blobs are actually one of the best things ever, because you get more guns on the same target at the same time, which means that blobbing up is actually one of the best tactics for Cyclones. Mexico's blind firing in the smoke by the looks of it. A DD pops up. I can't actually see him. I'm trying to shoot him based on the minimap, but not really having the best of luck here. I think I might be aiming too high. Oh, was that a hit? I'm afraid of pushing up to that point simply because there's at least a Bismarck pushing in from the left. There's DDs, there's Clevelands, there's lots of stuff that's aggressively pushing through that cap. And if I go too deep with my 12k health, I will die very, very quickly. And as I mentioned, you really don't want to be turning full broadside in this ship because, well, it does have a propensity of getting citadeled quite easily. It's no Pensacola when it comes to eating citadels, but it is very vulnerable when you give broadsides. Now, you got great torps though. 10km torps, they deal a bit more than 17k damage, and they got 10 km range. I'm pinging the Amage to make sure that he's aware that yes, I am in fact torping that smoke, so he doesn't accidentally make some sort of turn. It's very important if you're going to torp from kind of the second line as I'm doing here, it's very important you make it as clear as possible to the people between you and the target that there are in fact torps coming. And in this case, I pinged him multiple times on the minimap, I even gave him a get back order, so basically I caught his attention to the fact that there are going to be torpedoes going past him. In general though, I'm always a bit sketchy about launching these kinds of torps. I'm sketchy when people do it, and I'm sketchy when I do it myself. But if you're going to use them, like if there's a really opportune case like here, then make sure you let your teammates know that it's happening. Sadly, the Gajah Mada actually eats all the torps meant for the Cleveland, which is a bit unfortunate. However, I should be able to deal a significant amount of damage to the Cleveland. The Cleveland is amusingly sitting in the smoke, and my Amagi is close enough to actually spot him in the smoke because of the smoke firing penalty, but he cannot see me, which means I'm actually able to deal damage to him completely for free without taking any return damage. The problem is, the Fiji popped up and spotted me, and there are torps coming my way. These are Gajah Hamada torps, which are 8 kilometers, which means I will have to actively dodge them, and which means I'll have to slow down to dodge them. Luckily though, I am very angled, because I knew of course that these guys were pushing down this flank, so Royal Navy AP won't do that much damage to me. However, if he does hit my superstructure, he can still get some good overpens/pens going, so I'm just gonna start kiting away. And this is one of the reasons why this ship isn't very good in brawls. When you have to suddenly turn your turrets around and fight something on the other side, it takes a long time for the turrets to turn. However, I'm kind of baiting him into my torps at this point. I could turn away sharper, but I want him to keep chasing and keep shooting me, because if it keeps doing what he's doing right now, he's gonna sail into my torpedoes, which is pretty much my whole plan here. And it looks like the bait is in fact working quite well, and he ends up eating at least one torpedo, which is a good chunk of damage. Now I know he's used his damage con, because he got a flooding, so I'm switching to HE. I don't have expert loader at this point, which would be really good. I do get it later on, but not at this point. Regardless though, I switch to HE, and the Fiji pops up. Before he has time to shoot me, well, even if he has time to shoot me, my HE should be enough to absolutely delete him. The raw HE alpha alone just completely wrecks him. Even if it hadn't killed him, the fires would have killed him as well, if he would have had a heal. So it took some time and it took some setup, but ultimately I managed to turn that fight very heavily in my favor. But in general, brawling with the Fiji and the Myoko, very, very sketchy. Very, very sketchy if he has any idea what he's doing. That guy, however, didn't put up the best fight in that case. If the Fiji had just gone nose in and rushed me, the fight would have been significantly harder. Especially since Fiji has natural counters to me. For example, he can just run Hydro to see all my torps coming and so forth. In general though, chasing a Myoko is a lot more dangerous than going nose to nose with a Myoko, because most of you're very good at kiting, you're very good at dropping torps behind you. All of these reasons make the Myoko very strong at kiting away, but of course not nearly as strong in a nose to nose battle, which is why if you manage to close the distance and pick a nose to nose fight, then you usually have the advantage. The Eagle gets himself spotted, which is of course a huge mistake, and I easily kill him off. I turn in because I suspect he might have torped. You saw my rudder broke, by the way. And that's something that happens very, very often, as I mentioned, on this ship. And that's why we run last stand on the Myoko. Waiting for my torpedo reload, I'm going to be dropping a lot of preemptive torps this way, because both the Leon and the Fuso are pushing this way, and with my current health pool, especially in a cyclone, I want nothing to do with them. However, using the minimap, I can drop some fairly good preemptive torps their way as I kite away. Ideally, I want to see if I could maybe get a quick peek at the Fuso, because the Fuso needs to turn very heavily to bring his guns to bear. So the idea was I see him, I shoot, I turn away before he can turn and shoot me, but he was actually low enough that I managed to get the kill. It looks like the cyclone is fading, turning my guns, and once again dropping even more torpedoes. I will probably get spotted here, well, either by him or by the planes, but the torps I launched earlier based on the minimap in the cyclone turn out to actually be really good, and I do manage to score a hit. Sadly no flooding, which is of course very unfortunate, but at this point we have to keep kiting. Leon is very, very scary, especially since this Leon, if he knows to shoot HE, considering how low I am, I can't even angle against him, and he is in fact shooting HE, which makes him much more dangerous than normal. I'm just trying to get away and trying to survive. Damage con was probably a mistake, and I'm gonna see if I can get behind this island here and just get into cover, because we have, well, at this point we have a big lead. I think that was too greedy of a damage con there, and I'm gonna eat a full fire. However, I am getting into cover behind an island, so there's not really much he can do at this point, and there's no way he's going to be able to kill me. Cruiser fires last such short duration that one fire isn't the end of the world, but if he had gotten double fires there, he could have gotten the kill, which is why I considered it a bad move to blow my repair as quickly as I did. At this point though, I'm just hiding, waiting for the points to tick up, and we do in fact manage to secure the victory in this game. 135k damage, which is better than my average in the Myoko. I think I ended up with about 85k average damage in the ship as I grinded my way to the Mogami. 2 torp hits, kind of rare. Torps are very useful if the enemy pushes your way. If they're kiting away though, and they're kiting you, then you tend to struggle to get any sort of utility out of your torpedoes. But that's kind of the story of all IJN cruiser torpedoes. They are at their best when someone chases you, just like the ships themselves are at their best when someone chases you. Team score wise, 2.2k base XP. Considering it was tier 8 matchmaking, I will pretty happily take that. Not the best result, but not a bad result either, especially since Cyclone kicked in, which makes life a lot harder. Detailed report wise, almost Wither, about 2.5k short of getting Wither. All those fires on the Bismarck, of course, put quite a show on him. He ate 46k damage, a huge part of it just in pure fire damage. Torpedoes, 36 launch, 2 hit, but those 2 that hit were very valuable. So the Myoko is kind of like a superpowered Aoba. Whereas the upgrade from the Furutaka to the Aoba is quite small. The upgrade from the Aoba to the Myoko is very significant because, well, you go from that 6-gun broadside to that amazing 10-gun broadside, which does put a huge amount of additional damage, additional alpha at your fingertips. However, the competition also gets a lot rougher, but ultimately I still think the Myoko is a very, very good ship and a very strong cruiser. Anyway, let me show you guys my recommended build for this ship. As usual, I will start with the modules. There's not really much to talk about here. The Myoko only has hull upgrades that are really that important. Get the B hull upgrade, follow it up with the C hull upgrade for even better AA, and then finally get the Torp upgrade. The difference is small, but it's okay. Ultimately, you don't necessarily need to get the upgrade. You can skip it and just go straight for the Mogami if you so wish, but it's not a bad upgrade. It gives you some torp speed and torp damage, which is fine. It costs you a bit of reload, but ultimately the trade-off isn't that bad. Module wise, let's see, where is my Mogami? Consumable wise, priority is as usual damage control, and well, I would go for premium defensive AA if you can afford it, since the Myoko actually starts getting some pretty decent anti-air, especially if you have the sea hull and of course fighter plane. Upgrade wise, turret survival. I don't think you can slot defensive AA survivability at tier 7 yet, so you might as well go for steering gears mod survival, since that is extremely important on the tier 7. AA range and better rudder shift. Captain perks wise, well, this is of course my Mogami captain, so I have IFHE, but ultimately you'll want priority target, you'll want expert marksman because the default turret traverse is horrible on the Myoko, followed it up with fire chance and the concealment expert, and in order of priority, get last stand before you get AR. Yes, AR looks very tempting, but starting from the Myoko, you're gonna start losing your rudder all the time, and this will get you killed. Absolutely will get you killed. So try to get last stand first, and then follow it up with AR. Once you have these, well, then you can work in any direction you want. But getting these 2 basics, these 2 tier, honestly, you need all 3 tier 2 perks. They are so valuable on the Myoko, but ultimately though, order priority, absolutely last stand before AR. Flag wise, honestly the same as on all these cruisers. You want speed is pretty nice, fire chance is very nice. I don't detonation flag if you can afford to use them, but honestly economy flags is pretty much the way to go. Anyway, that was my Myoko commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.